Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the Chancellor and the Governor of the Bank of England united today to press the case for Britain's fast-growing technology sector. Philip Hammond said Britain must make the most of cutting-edge technologies to earn its way in the world economy. One area of innovation he pointed to is artificial intelligence, or AI, computers that can think like humans. Well, our business correspondent Helia Ebrahimi has been investigating the implications of AI for a special two-part report, the first tonight. But first, why is the Chancellor so excited about it, Helia?
Well, post-Brexit, Britain has to make money somehow. We already generate £7 billion from fintech alone, and that's all because of our financial services industry. But we're actually global leaders in another sector that underpins the so-called fourth industrial revolution, and that's AI, as you said. Most of that's actually tied up with this one company called DeepMind. As part of our special report, we spoke exclusively to the founder about their project with the NHS. We all know the health service is massively under pressure. The question is, will AI technology be the answer? For DeepMind, the problem is what they describe as reactionary paranoia, getting in the way of making sure patients get the full benefit. Seeing into the future of healthcare. A system currently stretched to breaking point, failing to meet its own guidelines to save the sight of hundreds of people every day. But perhaps the solution lies not with more doctors, but with machines powered by artificial intelligence.
We're very quickly going to reach a tipping point where AI can transform all of healthcare.
Whilst this at the moment is just a research project, the potential is enormous.
For the NHS, AI could mean better care and lower costs as machines take on some of the jobs done by doctors. Their power comes not just from analysing images in milliseconds, but learning from the data they collect. DeepMind, one of the companies at the forefront of those changes, leading the way in AI not just in the UK but in the world. It was set up in London by 3 partners in 2010. Just 4 years later, it was bought by Google for £400 million. DeepMind's flagship AI project is being done right here at Moorfields Eye Hospital. It gives us a sneak peek into a vastly new type of healthcare that patients love. But it also unnerves people worried about medicine slipping into corporate control. One of the founders, Mustafa Soleiman, talked to us exclusively about the company's project with the NHS.
What I'm really worried about is that the fear and the reactionary paranoia is going to limit the access to what is clearly going to be an incredibly valuable technology which will change people's lives.
In the UK, the total cost of blindness is £28 billion every year, equal to a fifth of the health budget. Every day, 220 people go blind because of macular degeneration, a completely treatable condition when caught in time. But the Royal College of Ophthalmologists says patients with acute AMD should be seen within 2 weeks, but the NHS is falling short of this guidance. Here at DeepMind's office, the technology they're pioneering is teaching machines how to self-learn and copy human intuition. Last year, in a groundbreaking moment, a computer outsmarted the best human brain in the ancient Chinese game of Go, the holy grail of AI. This game's special because there are more possible moves than there are atoms in the universe, so there's no way to calculate every option on the board. Instead, the machine had to mimic neural networks, learning from experience and acting a little like the human brain. Every time it did this, it got better, and eventually it bested the Grandmaster. Now, the same technology is being used to save people's sight. Elaine Manor knows all about the trauma that can bring. 15 years ago, she started to go blind in her left eye.
I was just devastated, and I just felt like that I was just walking along this path in the woods, and the shadows were getting darker and darker. Everything was getting dimmer and dimmer, and I felt less of a person. I felt a bit alienated from everybody else.
Then just 3 years ago, Elaine faced the prospect of losing the sight in her other eye as well.
I waited maybe 6 to 8 weeks for an appointment, worrying all the time that something dreadful was going to happen to this eye, just thinking about what the consequences would be if you were told you're blind, you're vulnerable. And life for me then wouldn't have been worth living, it really wouldn't.
But thanks to AI, it's turned out to be a very different story for her. She was one of Moorfield's first AI patients. And now, instead of living in the shadows, she spends her time in the clouds, raising money for other patients facing blindness.
How was it?
Absolutely fantastic.
My name's Becky, I'll be doing a scan today.
And this is AI in action. While it looks like a normal scanner, inside there's a machine learning tool that can analyze thousands of complex images almost instantly. They show not just the back of your eye, but the cross-section of the retina at a higher magnification than the MRI machine.
So this is part of your central nervous system.
Hours work for an eye consultant, just a few seconds for an AI machine.
We have a situation where the commonest cause of blindness in the UK is something called wet age-related macular degeneration. And the thing about AMD is that nearly 200 people every single day just in the UK develop the blinding forms of AMD. Now, the Royal College of Ophthalmologists states that these patients should be seen and treated within 2 weeks of the onset of their symptoms. The reality is on the NHS that that target is not being met. AI will allow us to identify those patients and get them treated not just within the 2 weeks, but potentially within 2 days.
Artificial intelligence is a remarkable achievement. You can see that in a place like this. But with it comes some very serious dilemmas. Will people ever accept mistakes made by machines? Because there will be some. And when those mistakes take place, who's responsible? The machines or the people behind them?
There's a real problem over lack of clarity on liability issues when you get into things like machine learning. If you take something like healthcare, within a short space of time, it may well be negligent for a doctor not to use an artificial intelligence aid. But in that situation, who's to say who's liable? Is it the tool which may have just interpreted some incorrect old data, or is it the doctor who's not really assessed whether or not the outcome of that tool is valid? These are quite difficult issues, but in my view it always has to be the doctor who remains liable. We've already seen it in quite an interesting experiment in Switzerland, where some sort of machine learning bot was let loose on the dark web. It was given, I think, €100 a week to go and spend on the dark web, and it went off and it bought some illegal drugs, it bought some firearms, and it bought some surveillance equipment. And the authorities found out about this thing and came in and, quote, arrested it. Of course, you can't arrest a machine, but we give these things personality and sort of ascribe liability to the machines when, of course, the things which were being done were really the responsibility of the people who had set this bot free.
Whatever the doubts, AI is now being used in specialities beyond ophthalmology. At Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital, it's being trialled in both heart surgery and pioneering fetal scans.
What artificial intelligence allows us to do is to capture the training and the experience of literally thousands of people very, very quickly and embed that into a computer algorithm. So we've captured much more than any single person could capture in a lifetime.
For Rebecca Hooper and millions of other mothers, these new types of scan show details never seen before.
A lot of the healthcare systems that we have are quite overwhelmed. If we talk about baby scanning, we're talking about millions and millions of pictures being generated at each centre where the scanning is carried out. In that case, the AI actually can analyse the pictures and help you to see if there's anything wrong with the baby.
But if AI can do all that, is this the end for doctors?
The way to think about these systems is that they're tools, just like scanners and scalpels. These are assistants that help us as humans to do better. They augment our existing human capabilities.
Of course, as a creator of the technology, he's a believer. But despite the progress at Moorfields, DeepMind has been drawn into controversy after a project at London's Royal Free Hospital was given access to sensitive data from 1.6 million patients to create an app for doctors. While the technology was much more basic and not at all AI related, it raised doubts about whether such a big project should be awarded to a commercial organisation, leading to some questions on privacy for DeepMind.
We have the security expertise of decades now to protect and store this data. In addition to that, we subject ourselves to the highest level of oversight. So we have a panel of independent reviewers who we've invited proactively to scrutinise us in the public interest. In fact, we've given them a budget to come and check out what we're doing and interview our staff, and hopefully they'll publish an annual report at the end of the year.
Do you accept that there's a concern that this information could be used commercially?
We've always invited that kind of scrutiny, but at the same time, we should be clear that there are enormous benefits to being able to scale things within commercial organisations.
Along the route, those organisations stand to make a fortune. Economists now describe data as the new oil, a 21st century commodity that will be the driver of wealth for companies. The question is, will this be at the expense of individuals? Do you think that machines will help humanity, or will it entrench inequality?
We have to think very sensitively about how any new technology is introduced, and if we don't introduce it wisely, it will entrench the existing order, put it that way. And so if we really care about inequality, then we should definitely start to think now, which is, I think, is early, and that's the right time to be thinking about it, about who benefits from that technology and how you can ensure those benefits are as widely available as possible.
AI technology can seem like it's been borrowed from a sci-fi script, but this type of medicine is coming faster than you think. There are huge gains to be made by patients and taxpayers alike, but there are risks too, because those gains depend on us giving up some of the secrets of our medical history to corporations we may not be able to control.
Now, artificial intelligence, will it save us or enslave us? Supporters of AI, computers which can think like humans, think it'll trigger an upheaval rivaling the Industrial Revolution. But doubters fear it will wipe out jobs and increase inequality. In the second in her series, our business correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi, looks at the impact AI could have on the economy and the workforce.
Konnichiwa. Hello. The age of the machine. What will it look like? The focus of endless fascination in film and literature. But will it be a utopian dream that frees humans from the drudgery of work? Or a nightmare where inequality is amplified and robots turn on us? The question is, what will society look like when jobs are increasingly done by machines? Will we all share prosperity equally? Or will AI create a more divided world, a new sort of techno-feudalism of haves and have-nots?
This is unprecedented. I think we're seeing a more rapid, more fundamental set of changes in technology than humanity has ever witnessed before.
Governments are not doing any kind of joined-up thinking. They're thinking of robots as being an economic driver without thinking about the societal impacts.
Technology has always been disruptive. From the printing press to factory mills to the car taking over from the horse and buggy. Each generation is worried about what their children will do. But those fears have always been assuaged by new jobs being created in new industries. It's been a history of manual labour shifting to professional work, The difference with AI is that those jobs can now be replaced too.
Well, I think we see risk coming through into the white-collar jobs, the professional jobs. We're already seeing artificial intelligence solutions being used in healthcare, in legal services, and so those jobs which have been relatively immune to industrialization so far, they're not immune anymore. And so people like myself as a lawyer, I would hope I won't be, but I could be out of a job in 5 years' time.
An Oxford University study suggests that between a third and almost a half of all jobs are vanishing because machines are simply better at doing them. That means the generation here simply won't have the access to the professions that we have. Richard Susskind is a lawyer who has written a book with his economist son about AI ringing in time for the traditional professions.
Almost on a daily basis, you're seeing new technologies emerge that seem to be taking on tasks that in the past we thought they could only be done by human beings.
Lots of people have talked about the shifts in technology leading to widespread unemployment, and they've been proved wrong. Why is it different this time?
The difference here is that the technologies, A, they seem to be coming through more rapidly, and B, they're taking on not just manual tasks but cerebral tasks too. They're solving all sorts of problems, undertaking tasks that we thought historically required human intelligence.
But for the Suskins, while many will lose their jobs, others will benefit, they say, from vastly cheaper, improved healthcare, legal advice and bookkeeping.
That it has to be right, that it's not the purpose of the law to provide a living for traditional lawyers. You know, it can't be the purpose of innumeracy and illiteracy to provide a living for traditional teachers. And those people who want to do those traditional roles, I think, are putting themselves ahead of recipients of the work that they do. You know, we have to remember that traditional professions like healthcare, like law, like education, they're creaking. You know, not enough people have access to the sort of expertise that we would want them to have.
We need to rethink, I think, recalibrate, reconsider what it is to live a life. And I don't believe that the most meaningful, fulfilling life is one that's largely spent in employment, which for most people, unfortunately, is largely spent in, if misery is too strong, at least in what is often very boring activity.
I think it's very unlikely that we're going to move to a utopian age. I'm afraid I'm rather more pessimistic that we're going to move to a greater degree of haves and have-nots.
So, in a world where most of us are unemployed because AI has taken our jobs, where is our income going to come from? Economists who have thought about this problem have come up with a solution. And it's a bit surprising given it's been born out of 21st century capitalism. In fact, it sounds rather similar to the ideas of this guy. If most of the wealth is created by a small number of AI firms, the rest of us will have to rely on a new kind of welfare payment called the Universal Basic Income. And it'll probably have to be funded by taxing the tech firms.
Will they give us a decent amount of money? But I'm suspicious about who sets that value, and will people be living on the poverty line, or will they be down the beach sipping martinis? And I come from a family of tradespeople, and work is the meaning of their lives, bringing food into their families. And what do they do without that?
In 1900, the way wealth in the national income was carved up meant that half of it came from raw labour. The other half came from returns on capital, like the ownership of land, companies and machinery. Today, that split is 60-40. But by 2050, economist Jeffrey Sachs says labour's slice will have shrunk to just 12%, with capital taking the lion's share. But in the future, much of that capital will mean ownership of AI machines.
And there are legitimate fears, I think, that some of these inequalities may become even more exaggerated as time passes, as a consequence of the sorts of technological change that we're seeing taking place. We might see the rise of new gatekeepers, entirely new types of institutions, very different types of individuals, building new types of barriers and new types of constraints around the work that they do. And from a public policy point of view, from my own standpoint, making sure that that prosperity is as widely enjoyed and that expertise is as widely shared as possible, I think is a really important task for all of us.
Are you worried?
I'm not worried, but I think, but I'm cautious.
But it's not just a question of how these machines will change our economy, it's also how they affect our society. Will they take social norms and amplify them in a way we don't like? in a process called automation bias. A striking example of this bias is Microsoft's Twitter-based chatbot called Tay. It was designed to learn from its interactions with 18 to 24-year-olds, but within 12 hours on the site, Tay was a foul-mouthed, racist, Holocaust denier that said feminists should all die and burn in hell. Another example is when Google's AI-driven image recognition program mistakenly labeled a black couple as gorillas. Even the news streams in Facebook and Google, which use algorithms designed to learn what the user likes, end up displaying only corroborating stories, creating filter bubbles where users might only encounter stories that confirm pre-existing beliefs.
When machines go wrong, they can go completely crazily wrong. But automation bias is when you just don't even think for yourself. You just, oh, it said that. So it's like the machine's making the decision. So for example, you're looking through job applicants and you might say, well, who's been a senior manager? That might be a good sort of, that type of person is the sort of person we want to employ. Now you're going to be biased completely against women, ethnically biased, because it's going to be all white middle-aged men that you're going to employ. And that's the kind of bias that really concerns me right across the board.
Many of the foremost minds of our time are concerned about the bigger existential risk posed by AI, that machines will not just stop at taking our jobs and changing societal norms, but that their programs will become more intelligent than us and eventually end up taking over the world. Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX and Tesla, described the creation of artificial intelligence as summoning the devil, while Stephen Hawking warned that AI could spell the end of the human race. And even Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, one of the biggest developers of AI, admitted he saw very big risks on the horizon. The vision of machines coming to get us lurks deep within our cultural psyche. Maybe that's why the exhibition at the Science Museum has been so popular. But our fixation with the apocalypse could prove a distraction from what's happening in the economy. While automation will undoubtedly improve many services, the pace and the manner workers are displaced will determine how society handles the change. As machines become more human, the risk is a new type of feudalism might take hold, as in so many dystopian visions, and that could make us all irrelevant.
Helia Ebrahimi reporting there. Well, joining me now from North London is the chair of Tech City UK and former member of David Cameron's business advisory group, Eileen Burbidge. And here in the studio, Swedish philosopher at Oxford University and author Nick Bostrom. So it's either a utopia where we're all freed from mundane jobs, allowed to live more fulfilling lives, or we're all made redundant and totally irrelevant. Nick Bostrom, which one do you think it is?
Well, the two things you said sound like different sides of the same coin. I think the more capable machines are, the greater the number of jobs they can perform better than we do. And then that poses two challenges. One is where will you get your income from? And you spoke about the universal basic income. That's one way to solve that problem. The other is the meaning problem, where do you get your dignity and sense of fulfillment in life if you can live as a rentier or an aristocrat, not having to work. But there is precedent for that. A lot of people have found a great fulfillment even while they didn't have to work.
But Eileen Burbidge, we heard that Oxford University study suggesting around 35% of all jobs in the UK are at risk because a machine has become better at doing their job. I mean, how can that possibly be a positive thing?
Well, I mean, I think that in and of itself might not be a positive thing, but certainly we've seen it before in sort of prior industrial revolution, for example, when we saw agriculture get constantly reformed by new machinery and automation. I think what has to complement that statistic in that study is the fact that there are other studies which also cite the fact that children who are entering primary school in this year are going to be coming out of their education into jobs, 30% of which, or even more, don't exist today. So there will be even newer job categories and other types of work for people to do.
But we have also seen in the past, for example, with the decline of industries like coal mining and steel, what that can do to communities if nothing comes in its place.
No, absolutely. And I think a really crucial aspect of all of this, as with any other kind of innovation and evolution of sort of job markets and labor forces, is that we need to think a lot about reskilling and training and actually how we sort of skill up domestically and the people who are going through school or even in jobs today and what that might look like then within coming decades or years.
I mean, Nick Bostrom, you once said that this was like small children playing with a bomb. I mean, that's a pretty bleak assessment.
Well, so that was referring to this hypothetical even more advanced level of technology, if we one day can build machines that attain superintelligence, not just replace us in particular jobs, but do everything that the human mind can do, but much better, then yes, that would be a very powerful thing that when we do it, we need to be really careful about. But I think before that, we will start to see the impact of machine intelligence in a wide range of sectors in society. And in a sense, the displacement of human workers, it's not a side effect, it's kind of the goal. I mean, not just with AI, but with automation in general. The goal is full unemployment. The goal is to figure out how to get more done with less effort. This has been the name of the game since, you know, we started inventing fire so that we didn't have to chew the food as much, and from then on.
But we saw Professor Noel Starkey in the piece talk about the value of work in itself for human beings.
Right. But there is also value in a lot of other things that we humans do. Conversations with friends, like art and literature, you know, a hobby, playing golf, like gardening, like people take value in all kinds of things. And the idea that what gives human life meaning is that you get a paycheck at the end of the month is actually a historical anomaly. For most of human history, the noble thing to do was not to have to sell your labor. That's kind of almost like a form of prostitution. You had to do it because you were poor, but the privileged wouldn't have to do that. So maybe the hope would be that one day we can all be in that predicament where we have to find meaning in the activity itself, not because it provides some ulterior benefit.
But Eileen Burbidge, that is suggesting a level of equality that sounds almost fantastical.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an ideal situation, and I appreciate what the professor is saying. I think the idea is that automation, artificial intelligence, and technology and innovation generally should be able to give us more choice in terms of what we spend our time doing. It should take manual processes and make them more efficient. It should be able to automate things and free people up to sort of pursue more creative areas and things to do with their time. I don't necessarily believe that artificial intelligence is going to lead to utopia, but I also don't necessarily believe that it's going to be sort of all peril for us. I think, like innovation, it's something that we have to research more of, and the government is doing that to support that. And we are having to think about where we can use it for positive outcomes, for instance, healthcare, or trying to reduce bias, for example, in certain situations, whether it's with financial services or lending and other types of applications. There's a lot of benefits that can come from this, but obviously we have to gauge it carefully.
Nick Bostrom, I mean, briefly, Eileen Burbidge there talking about that she accepts that there are dangers and we need to safeguard against that, but we can't go back, can we, briefly?
No, that's right. I think this is a path along which we will continue to travel. We'll develop more and more advanced machine intelligence. It has many applications, and one day we will go through this portal to the age of superintelligence.
Nick Bostrom and Eileen Burbidge, thanks very much. Sorry to cut you off there, but thank you very much.